All right, today we're doing lesson 16-3, continue to classify quadrilaterals. So we're looking at the quadrilaterals a little different way. Look at the quadrilaterals below. In the table, write the letters for all the figures that are trapezoids. Then do the same with each of the other quadrilaterals. You can work with a partner to solve this, work with a family member, work with a friend online, whatever you need to do. So list the letter of each figure in each group. So let's see. Trapezoid. So the definition of a trapezoid, remember you can go back to the previous lesson to get your trapezoids. So a trapezoid, oops, we've got one there, and one there. So we'd have R, O, and S. So it's going to have one set of parallel sides. Parallelogram, two sets of parallel sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops, should change my color on that. 5. So let me get that in a different color here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've got G, L, V, M, N, and a rectangle. We've got one rectangle. And we've got no squares. And then underneath that, we are looking for a rhombus. So we've got one rhombus. V is considered a rhombus. So we're just looking at more classifications. Okay. Which quadrilateral had the most shapes? And it would be the parallelogram, because a parallelogram and rectangles and rhombuses all are parallelograms. So that is the one we identified the most. The next page. Great, absolutely fantastic graphic organizer to help you understand that everything's a quadrilateral, which is just a four-sided shape. And then there's two branches from the quadrilateral. We have all the parallelograms. Trapezoid sits over here by himself because he only has one set of parallel sides. All these other guys have two sets of parallel sides. And then other features. So it's a really good drawing for you to check out. Each branch of the tree shows a subcategory of the figure above. If a square is a type of rectangle, all rectangles are parallelograms. Each figure shows the properties of the figures above. A square and a rectangle each have 4 right angles. All the figures below the parallelogram have 2 pairs of parallel opposite sides. So how this shows you how they're related to each other. When can a rectangle be a rhombus? Okay, so here we go. They love these kind of questions on tests. When can a rectangle be a rhombus? Can a rhombus be a rectangle? Explain using examples. So a square is a rectangle and a rhombus because it has a rectangle because it has 2 sets of parallel sides and it forms right angles. And it's also a rhombus, which is 2 sets of parallel sides. And therefore, the only time a rectangle can be a rhombus or a rhombus be a rectangle is when it's a square. So the only time a rectangle can be a rhombus is when it's a square. Remember, a square is a very specific name, but a square can also be called a rectangle. A rectangle cannot be called a square. So the only time is when a square is a rectangle. And then, oops. Okay, on to the next page. A little bit of work. Explain how the family tree diagram on page 864 shows that every square is a rectangle. Since a square is below a rectangle in the family tree diagram, every square is an example of a rectangle. So it's below the rectangle on the diagram. How are a rectangle and a rhombus alike? They both are parallelograms. And tell whether the statement is true or false. All rectangles are squares. False. Remember, a rectangle has two sets of parallel sides and right angles, but the two sets of sides are not necessarily equal. Only in the case of a square are they all equal. So you can't say all. This is a rectangle and this is a rectangle, but only this one is a square. So that would be false. Every rhombus is a parallelogram, and that is true, because a parallelogram's definition is a set of parallel sides, and a rhombus has at least one set of parallel sides, and a rhombus has at least one set of parallel sides. Parallelograms are special rectangles. False. Parallelogram is the category above a rectangle, so a rectangle is a special parallelogram. Will be reverse in the way it's written there. A trapezoid can be a square, and that's false, because remember, a square has to have four equal sides and make four right angles. So go back to the page before and answer the independent practice questions using the chart on the page before.